Hello again. I've been having more and more conversations about the possibility of reopening our church buildings for public worship. Of course, for a while now it's been legally possible for churches in England to be open for worship, and the fact that the churches where I work have mostly stayed closed has been our decision, largely because places of worship have been treated as an exception to the general rules for the last few months. That state of affairs came about after some lobbying from prominent Christian leaders such as the Archbishop of Canterbury, who is of the opinion that worship is not a social event. And presumably, therefore, the virus knows that when we gather indoors, it is not to spread because we're praying or something. I'm being a bit sarcastic, of course. The ABC's model of worship seems to be based on a different way of seeing church from mine, in which you come and you do your religious thing, which to a greater or lesser extent involves somebody else doing things on your behalf, and then you go home. Whereas I'd say that worship is not just a social event, but it is a social event. Anyway, that's a digression. But it's just to say that I am still a bit uncomfortable with the idea of places of worship being treated as an exception. However, we are reviewing our decisions, and it's likely that reopenings may well happen in the not too distant future. But if or when they do, we will have the difficult job of remembering that we are still subject to other regulations. We're not supposed to be talking and chatting to each other. We have to abide by that strange model where worship is a passive thing. And singing is now even more restricted than it was. Not good for a bunch of Methodists for whom singing together has always been a key part of worship. And all that is because as time has gone on and we've learnt more and more about how this virus operates, it seems that airflow is a big issue. Airflow is a big issue. Our church buildings will still need to be kept very well ventilated. It seems that being where there is a natural flow of air is a big factor in reducing the risk of transmission. And so, outdoors is much safer than indoors. I've always found the wind rejuvenating. I've been lucky in that my mobility has meant it's rarely been a big problem for me. And even when for a while I commuted by bicycle across the Menai Suspension Bridge in North Wales, battling against the wind there felt like an enjoyable challenge rather than a threat. And I always like to be able to open the window. Even if I don't always want it open, I like to be able to open it. The feeling of fresh air after being shut inside for a long time is quite something. Years ago I remember being in hospital, and after a matter of just a few days shut inside, I was desperate for a breath of fresh air. And there is a dignity in being able to take those little decisions as well. It's good for our mental health to be able to have even a small degree of an ability to act, to do something, to make a little decision or change our environment a little bit. I rather suspect that might be part of the reason why COVID restrictions have been so difficult for some of us. We don't do so well when we have no ability to act. When everything is imposed from outside, it makes our humanity smaller. Of course, if we have the ability to do everything, then we put others at risk. That's why we do generally need some system of law, some general consensus on how we run our society, some agreed restrictions on our freedom. So I'm not saying we don't need extra restrictions in a pandemic, just that they have a negative effect as well as a positive one. Meanwhile, the ability to get fresh air is good for our physical health too, of course. It seems that enclosed spaces, like church buildings, are the most dangerous for the spread of this particular virus. A lot of work has gone into modelling airflow and the like, and to help us understand how to improve the way we use our buildings. And meanwhile, the advice seems to be to ventilate. Ventilate. Open the windows and let the fresh air in. Trainee preachers get taught, if they don't know already, that the biblical words for spirit also mean wind and breath. So it's likely that's been mentioned many times in sermons. And that joining together of what we English speakers categorise as three different things helps us to understand some of the imagery we find in the Bible. When your translation says breath or wind, think spirit too. And maybe when your translation says spirit, think breath or wind too. Spirit is a difficult word. In the world beyond our religious jargon, it might mean a kind of alcoholic drink, or the essence or quality of someone, or a presence which goes beyond what is physical. I am with you in spirit, and the like. And the English word spirit too comes from a Latin word which means breath. The Spirit inspires us with a breath. Inspiration and respiration. There's a life-giving breath. Those of us who are alive are distinguished by the fact that we breathe God's breath into the dust of Adam. God's Spirit in humanity gives us life. And the Spirit blows where it will. The wind can blow us over, but it can also be rejuvenating. It can blow away the cobwebs and the viruses, and it can drive us to new places. And all of that is life, cleansing, invigorating, and not quite under our control. God bless. See you soon.